my name is Joseph Carlson, and I am here with Avin Carroll, and this is episode 20 of The Grief of Politics. Avin, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. Yourself?
Good. So we had an episode planned that we were going to do. We announced it at the end of last month's episode that we were going to talk about water, which I still think is important. But everything that has happened so far with Trump at Mar-a-Lago just keeps developing. And I know we said offline, we talk to each other on the phone all the time, and we talked about, hey, we should talk more about current events and the news and what's going on. And this is obviously a big, and we want to preface this by saying it's developing as we're reporting on it. But we both talked for, an hour offline yesterday about various things. And this morning I text Avin in a panic because apparently, not in a panic, but I was like, whoa, apparently there are some people, armed Trump supporters outside an Arizona FBI office across the street. They have what appears to be like AR-15 style rifles, pistols, Trump flags. A few days ago in Ohio, a man shot a nail gun apparently at a field office there in Ohio and was involved in a high-speed chase and was finally killed by the FBI agents. So, Avin, you read some of these but couldn't read other ones. But really yesterday we actually talked about a lot of stuff, and I didn't ask you. We didn't have a lot of time to go into what do you think of, the whole Mar-a-Lago thing or whatever. Like, the raid and the...
It's interesting to me. And the reason I say it's interesting to me is, one, as I've said it before, I don't think Trump's innocent. I keep seeing a lot of stuff in conservative media that talks about how this is a witch hunt. They're just trying to get him, and they hate him, and they're just, fabricating charges so they can prosecute him and keep him from running for president. And to some degree, I do think that, Democrats, progressive, basically anyone on the left side of the political spectrum does not want Trump to run for office and become president again. However, I also don't think that he's innocent. I think that he is really well lawyered and has defended himself very well. And we have known who he was since well before he was president. As I talked to you about before, there's a reason his nickname used to be Teflon Don.
Yeah.
There's a reason he was sued as many times as he was. Mm-hmm. And he did a very good job before and now of deflecting blame and responsibility to other people. Mm-hmm. He's very good at it. So this raid doesn't honestly surprise me. It wasn't anything that I was shocked about, any way, shape, or form. I do think there's a great irony that they're going to probably go after him with the Espionage Act, which he himself strengthened as president in his attempts to go after Hillary Clinton. Mm-hmm. So, we'll see what comes out of it. I will not be surprised if there's, some really interesting stuff that comes out of it. I also wouldn't be surprised if it sort of fizzles and ends up DOA. Because almost every attempt they've made to come after former President Trump, has ended with, we've got this bombshell, and the bombshell comes out, and it's like,
I will say, I see where you're coming from, but I think this is slightly different, because I remember during all of the things that were going on during his presidency with the impeachments, there was a lot of legal people saying, the president is shielded from prosecution for whatever. Even I don't like Trump, I do understand a sitting president having to do his job and not being involved with legal problems. But I think now that he is a private citizen, former government employee, literally. I don't think he's going to have those type of legal protections that he used to have. And two, there was reports coming out while he was president that many lawyers that work for him in the private sector, they talk and they were kind of like, you don't really want to work with him because one, he doesn't listen, and he literally waits till last minute to pay you if the money comes at all. And so now he's in a predicament which he is lawyered up, but I think that I don't know. I think it is a different thing, and I think like we talked on the phone and you just mentioned, he did make this Espionage Act worse. If there's a way to connect that to the files that he had, that is troubling. I don't know if he's going to serve any time, but I will say that I don't think the FBI is flawless, obviously, and there probably needs to be some kind of reckoning there with, various things come out over the years. I did hear former FBI agent Peter Strokes, who was way involved with the Hillary Clinton thing, I think left the agency, but he was being interviewed in CNN today, and he said that, while they were investigating Hillary Clinton in the email thing and doing due diligence, no Republican raised a finger and said you were overreaching. He goes, we executed several search warrants into her email servers, and not one Republican stepped forward and said, you guys are overreaching, And he said, so for them now to turn around and say this is, a breach of whatever, they're saying, get ready for war, arm up, stuff like that. That's one of the rhetoric that the Ohio man said, I guess, on his social media, so it's like this kind of stuff leads to violence, and especially with the group of politics, like, that man is dead. And, there's not a lot of facts about it, but I imagine he had a family. Like, I don't know. I think this is really dangerous. Like, no matter what, I have problems with the FBI. Like, I don't want to see anybody get hurt or, and again, they didn't wake up one morning and just decide to go to Mar-a-Lago and start going through Trump's stuff. Like, they had to present evidence to a judge. The judge had to read the evidence, and say, oh, this is pretty important. And I just want to point out,
I'm actually following up on that because we picked up on this news this morning and haven't dug into it a whole lot. One of the things we talked about pre-show was who was the judge? Was it a Trump appointee? And it turns out that the judge that approved it actually was like a fallback because the judge that was on duty to make these approvals wasn't available, so they gave it to this other judge who did deem that there was probable cause of the crime. Just finding it interesting. I haven't dug much deeper than that, but I did want to say it.
Yeah, it was another judge, so obviously he's going to follow the same protocols as their first choice, basically. I don't know. I just want to say, I don't think, like a lot of people on the left and the right have said, like, if this is wrong, like if they get this wrong, like I just saw an article pop up while we were doing this again. This is a more hurried episode because things are developing, but it's getting pretty intense. There's a lot of people saying, listen, if they miss on this, like Merrick Garland has to resign because this is such a big deal. And I agree, like there has to be some kind of accountability on either side. If the FBI fumbled it, there's got to be some kind of accountability. If Trump is found guilty of the Espionage Act and they can prove, and to say Trump's not a paperwork guy, I don't know. It does seem plausible that some of that stuff ended up in his possession. He didn't read any of it. He's like, oh yeah, but I don't know. I really think one of his lawyers, the White House counsel at that point should have sat down and go, listen, you at least need to let us go through these. You can't just take these boxes. Trump said he declassified them, but you can't just wave a wand and do that to like a bunch of boxes sitting on the floor, which is, I heard some people, Trump's like, oh, I declassified all of them. It's like, that's not how you don't get to just say that and then documents are magically declassified. That's not how that works. So, and like I told you offline, I would imagine that everything that has been classified has also been cataloged on the back end. And so, the FBI has done this a few times in May and June. They were talking with Trump's legal team and they said, oh, we gave you everything. They signed an affidavit, said we gave you everything. But like, as they're going through these boxes, that's why this probably got executed, is whenever they executed the warrant, they were like, hey, we don't have X, Y, and Z. Where are they? Well, we've been through this 8 times. There's nothing here. Okay, well then.
Well, yeah, and I haven't read through the warrant. I haven't read through kind of that aspect of it, so I don't know if that's true. It's a solid speculation.
Well, you work in IT and you talk. Yeah, you talked about it a little bit
And in
offline.
IT, there's a principle we call data loss prevention, which tracks anything that leaves, um, or is opened or touched within your storage of documents and information. I'm dramatically oversimplifying it,
Hmm.
and I can only imagine that in a top secret government level setup that anything along those lines would also be logged and recorded, because you wouldn't want someone to just be able to walk in, grab a file, and walk away with it.
Right.
Um,
There's still some talk that it
so I don't
could.
know.
There's still some talk that it could be like nuclear information, and there's a lot of like weird conspiracies about what was going on with that. I'll say that taking all that out, if it is true that he has documents containing to some kind of nuclear information, to me that is incredibly damning. To cut out all the speculation that I've heard of, oh, he might have sold the information, like all that's hearsay. But if he actually does have just like a nuclear document in his possession, that is really bad. Like,
Well, so he wouldn't have a nuclear document in his possession, because that would be very bad. But he might have documents about our nuclear capabilities or weaknesses
right,
or strengths or research.
right. Well, that's what I'm.
And
That's what I'm
that
saying.
could be bad. Depends what it's about.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Right? If it's about our nuclear capabilities in 1960, like that's whatever. Who cares? That's public knowledge at this point in time. If it's about strategic, where's our missile placement? What's our nuclear submarine strategy? That kind of stuff. That could be very damning. The word nuclear is very weighty, and it carries a lot of power. It really depends on what it's about.
Yeah, I mean that's true, but I mean it. At the end of the day, I'm not going on the speculation that he may sell them. Like that's all. I don't want to get into that. But what I'm saying is, especially since he did report they've broken into my safe, which I don't think they broke into it. I think they were standing there going, "What's the code? Open it. We have a warrant. Open your safe." And then he opened his safe, and then, well, he wasn't there. But anyway,
Or his aide or whomever it might be, and maybe they didn't have the code. Maybe they had to cut it open.
I don't know. Do you? Not even Trump, but that's got to be pretty.
Right? Like they have access to it.
That regardless who it is, if it's Trump or whoever, I imagine as an agent, that's got to be kind of gratifying when you have this executed search warrant to do that. And you're like, yeah, cut it open. Like you get that moment of like, do it. Yeah, I don't know. I just
Yeah.
I don't want to. Again, I don't want to be too hyperbolic. Some of this stuff is obviously still developing, like we've said. But I do hope. I guess I just want something to happen, because I do think the problems I've had with Trump, it's been brought up several times, and I agree. Even on the left, they're like, well, this is dumb. This isn't far enough, or like we don't have enough evidence. Or even on the left, and especially on the right, people are like, you're overreaching. You can't impeach him. This whole Ukraine thing, like all that stuff. But like, if this is something that they connect, it seems like now they have a literal paper trail. If they can somehow connect that to him and him getting like, that is pretty nuts. So,
Well, and you and I had talked about too earlier in the week after the raid. Had a conversation too about people that are beginning to distance themselves, or being encouraged to keep quiet and keep themselves distanced, because this is one where there actually is a good chance he could get prosecuted.
right.
One of his attorneys, I read an article this week, one of his attorneys advised him, like, hey, if you want this to all go away, you just need to go out publicly and announce that you're not running for president in 2024. The speculation on her end, of course, being, or the belief on her end being, that this is all really just to keep him from running for president, and if he announces he's not going to, that everyone will back off. I don't know if that's
I don't
true
think
or not.
that's.
I think there's a lot of animosity towards Trump. I think that people are going to push through anyway.
Yeah, that seems like a stretch.
And we still have a lot of investigation stuff going on with January 6th committees.
I think when the weekend started, there was 4 things brought up. I think 4 investigations. One is from New York AG about his tax problems, because to get loans, he would lie about the value of his properties, and he already had a deposition. Apparently, he pleaded the fifth hundreds of times. He only answered one question, which was his name, and then read a statement at the end about how he was, because his family may be persecuted, he doesn't want to incriminate himself, even though there's been several sizzle reels of him saying if you plead the fifth, you're guilty. He said that several times at rallies. Those are floating around. You can go find those pretty easy. The other investigation is the Mar-a-Lago raid. So obviously that's, whatever. The third one is the one that I think is the most damning out of the January 6th hearings. A lot of, even on the left, they're like, oh, this is all spectacle. What is this going to... Even some people that I respect in media, I'm like, you guys really need to start watching this, because there's a problem in Georgia right now with, apparently he was involved in a meeting about getting fake electors in the system to basically certify the election for him and not Joe Biden. And to me, that is the most troubling thing that I don't even hear people on the left talking about. And I think we should be talking about that more, because if anybody did that, I would want them, the full letter of the law to come down on them, because that's literally the bedrock of our, voting democracy, is to make sure that the electors or whatever. To me, if they can connect the dots there, apparently he was involved with meetings, and apparently there's already a grand jury reading over evidence, and they even had Pence's aides in the room, and they were asking him very specific questions about who was in the room, who knew what timeline was President Trump there, how did this stuff circulate around, what did you guys know? To be at that level and have Pence and his aides. And the fourth one that I heard, I believe there's still some defamation suits going on with some women that allegedly he sexually harassed back in the day. There was 12 women originally, and I think there's still some stuff going on with that. So I don't think those have been resolved. So I will say, no matter what I think about Obama or Clinton, that's a lot of lawsuits. Especially now that you're a private citizen and have to lawyer up and worry about,
I mean, he makes an incredibly valid point when he talks to people to defend himself, right? That, you can't not have a successful business and not be involved in lawsuits. And pretty much once you have any business of a certain size, you're going to run into it, particularly in the real estate space.
Oh, yeah.
The problem is there's so many. The volume is ridiculous. Now, volume of lawsuits does not equate guilt. But we have a saying, where there's smoke, there's fire.
Yep.
And it exists for a reason. Even if it's not a completely true saying. The idea that if he's been painted as, or he's been sued this many times, there's got to be something wrong. You aren't hated so much by society that people all continuously keep coming at you with fake lawsuits, because there's a lot of people in the world that are hated that don't get sued this much.
Well, you and I were talking offline about...
But it's not guilt.
Right. Well, you and I were talking offline about the fact that him running for president was probably the worst thing he could have done, because he was having legal problems before, just being a business, like you just said.
Yep.
And the fact that now the world is looking at him, literally, or the United States, now that's a new level of, man, if I was him, I would have been I just need to coast and not. I already got 4 lawsuits from.
Why would I bring so much attention to myself?
Right.
When I'm already, on shaky ground. The reason, in my opinion, is Trump has the biggest ego of any human being who's ever lived.
It's pretty big.
At least anyone that's been documented, because no one has had so much exposure, so much ability to get out in front of people and have their ego stroked so much in the history of mankind. And the guy doesn't know how to stop.
Mm-hmm.
He can't help it. He's probably the most easy to manipulate president we've ever had, because all you have to do is either stroke his ego or attack his ego, and he has to respond.
Yeah.
He doesn't know how not to. And his aides can't stop him.
Yeah, I will say 2 things I thought was pretty amazing for him. When the Mar-a-Lago raid happened, he didn't really release a statement for a day or 2. And then I heard the next day, I heard audio of him. He was giving a speech for Sarah Palin or something and they said, "How are you doing, Mr. President?" He said, "Oh, it's been a rough day." That's really all he said. And then he literally did plead the fifth hundreds of times and make that statement at the end about being persecuted. I do think he had this moment. I mean, I've heard a lot of people on the left go, wow, it only took him 4 years to figure this out. But shut up. Like his lawyer really sat him down and said, "Hey, this is big boy. You know, you need to. You don't have the White House counsel anymore, and you don't have that shielding clause in the Constitution about no no litigation. Like this is all you now." So, and I thought that was pretty crazy. He did make a statement about Obama had 30 million classified documents that he took home with him. He just throws a number out there. A lot of like I don't know if Obama did, but I don't think he had 30 million. If he did have some, and I'm sure no matter what.
I mean, he also made a statement about if I read the quote correctly, like everyone takes work home with them or something like that. And I'm like, but you're the president. Your home is the White House, so you're
you can just have them
out of the White House.
Yeah, you can literally just get them in the Oval Office and read them there, and then give them to an aide, and then say, or the proper whoever, and say, I'm going to go to the residence, and I'm not bringing this stuff to the residence.
Right. Like there's no need for him to take it to his other properties. Mm-hmm. But I mean, I could also see other presidents and other people having taken the documents, and easily see that other presidents wouldn't pursue anything about it.
Well, I do know that I think Bush, I read, was a former president who still got CIA briefs. But to me, that isn't classified. That's all declassified stuff that they're like...
Bush Sr.
Yeah. So it's like, to me, that was like not classified stuff. It was just...
It's not declassified. It's still classified information.
Oh. Well, I mean, he probably still had clearance.
Once you are a president, you have the right to continue to receive your CIA briefings.
Yeah.
And if I remember correctly, Bush Sr., who was the one that did it, had been a super high level person within the CIA already.
I heard he was the first civilian to get the head job at one of the head offices of CIA, because everybody else had been like former military, and he was a civilian and got the job. Yeah. I heard
Yeah, so it was my understanding that he was already really closely connected to the CIA, so I'm not surprised he continued.
Yeah, he probably just called Bob down at the CIA. Was like, "Hey, send those over my way," and they're like, "Yeah, of course."
The CIA briefings, though, are different than taking other private, secret government documents home. And the reason it is damaging, the reason that exists is because that information can leak.
Yeah.
And information can be stolen. If it's not properly tracked and recorded where it's at, you could die and pass away. It's saved in a safe somewhere. At some point, someone gets into it and finds out all kinds of secret government information. Even if it's not nuclear, it could be, other secret information about military raids or support of other things going on that isn't public knowledge, that shouldn't be public knowledge, that can be very damning to national security. So, yeah, I understand. I still think it's sort of grasping at straws to find something. I definitely do think that he's in a really bad situation.
I disagree.
Really, honestly, get in trouble.
I disagree. Just because the amount of legality they had to grasp at straws, like the fact that they had to issue a warrant, the judge had to read the warrant, Merrick Garland had to sign off on it. Like that isn't them. Again, that's not them waking up in the morning going, "Let's go to Merrick." Like they had to hit a certain and they
correct
and they know too. Like I heard the rumors of like, "Oh, we didn't think this was going to be a big deal," but I think there was some people there going, "Hey, this isn't just Joe Carlson in Washington State. This is the former president. We need to make sure that we do this by the book." There's also a report that maybe one of his Secret Service members is like a mole, because apparently the FBI agents knew exactly where to go, and that's part of because the affidavit. I don't think one of the documents they don't have to that is still sealed. I think it's the level of what they're going after. Like they could say what they can take, but they haven't unsealed. Anyway, since they were so specific, the safe is here, this is here. They're like, we have a feeling that like one of his, which if
someone internal has been leaking information. Yeah, I read about that too.
Which I think is
and that's probably Trump's biggest concern at the moment is who's leaking what and what do they know.
Strangely enough, I read that he was asking people if they thought there was a mole, like, after the raid. Like, Let me ask you something, Avin. If you and I are a mole, or I'm a mole and I'm working for you, and you go, "Hey, do you think we got a mole?" I'm gonna be like, "No, there's no mole. Do you want me to get you a frappuccino?" Like what? Like, what do you?
I don't know. I'd be the opposite about it. I'd be like, yeah, definitely. Someone knows where it's at. We got to figure out who it is. Like, I'd want to keep the trust and keep them off my back. Plus, Trump is paranoid, so yeah, I'd want to stroke that part of his personality.
Yeah, I will say if that is true, there was this talk I know leading up to January 6th that like, oh, is there people still loyal to Trump? Are they going to like lock the White House down and not let him leave? Is this going to be like an armed situation? And to have it swing the other way where someone's like, I don't like what's going on. And them seeing him move, like, to me, that if that is true, that is worse, because if they're seeing him move documents around and being Secret Service, if it is Secret Service, and they've been with him this long and are seeing the movement of these documents, and they get to the level where, like, I need to call somebody. You know what I mean? Like, to me, that is more telling. Because that's something where that person is like, I don't want to be wrong about this, But if...
it wasn't Secret Service. It was probably someone that he's actually, like, politically really close to, like Giuliani.
There was talk that it was,
something.
like, maybe one of his kids. But then, I don't know. I don't know if that's true, because I think they're dyed in the wool. There's no way they would go. Unless they thought it was so criminal that they're like, I want absolutely no part of this. Like, even they have a red line that they did not want to cross, where they're like, whatever you're doing with these, I don't want a part of it.
Maybe they want to CYA, It could easily be like, hey, I'm gonna come out of this as looking like the good guy. I don't want to be like going down with the shit.
Yeah.
Like, maybe they already think that there's enough stuff out there to take their dad down and they want to separate it. I would be surprised if it was one of his kids.
I'd be shocked.
Then again, I wouldn't, because it's Trump. And there's nothing shocking then about Trump.
Yeah.
Right? Like, the guy can talk about killing people in the street and not getting in trouble about it, and then not get in trouble about it. The guy can be recorded talking about sexual assault, even though he never... we don't know for sure he didn't act on it, because there's a lot of accusations. But even though that he's never... didn't act on that particular incident that he's on tape about, right? Like, he's openly discussed that he did sexually assault someone. And,
Yeah. I mean, there's tape.
but it's locker room talk.
Which did you?
And that,
so when that all came out, did you read?
That didn't hurt.
There was sports people like basketball stars and stuff going, I don't know. I don't think he's ever been in a locker room, because we just talk about Gold Bond medicated powder in like the game. You know what I mean? Like, we talk about that was rough, and oh man, yeah, no, don't use this brand. Use this, like, oh, lotion, yeah, like, you know what I mean? Like, that's what we talk about in the locker room. Like,
no, I did not hear that. Yes, I do believe it.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't like Trump. I don't think he is as vile as people make him out to be. I think he's a bumbling buffoon. I think he has a massive ego. I feel like when he was president, he was manipulated into doing a lot of stuff as president, like signing bills and endorsing stuff by the people around him, because they were very good at making him think it was his idea and getting him to approve their own pet projects.
yeah, I mean, he was a guy.
They were able to manipulate and use his crowd. Like, his followers, his base are so loyal and so committed to him that, I think anyone that figures out that, hey, if I stroke his ego the right way, I can get what I want. I think a lot of people glommed onto that.
Yeah. And I just want to bring this back to the actual grief part. I think the GOP especially really needs to turn down their rhetoric, because all these people are Marjorie Taylor Greene. Like, all these people are like, oh, it's time. And other people are taking that to heart, and people are getting hurt, and a man died, Whatever I feel about the Capitol attack, there was the one, I think she was retired Air Force. She actually tried to breach the chamber, and she was killed. Not the only, she was like, I think the only civilian killed. The other people were police, I think. But she was shot and killed, and I didn't want that to happen to her, But just like this guy, like, no matter what I think about Trump, I didn't want this guy to breach a FBI building and get shot, but he put himself in this situation where if you open fire on
And,
FBI
and
agents.
conservative media that's always been about protect law enforcement, protect law enforcement, protect law enforcement is now going, well, this is a witch hunt. We're weaponizing our justice system. You know, the FBI has been compromised, and they're now part of the, you know, the, I don't know what the phrase that would be used to describe it, but they're all part of the witch hunt against Trump. And yeah, I think conservative media has a large level of responsibility, and conservative politicians have a large level of responsibility to recognize that people are going to act on it. But I have to wonder how many of them believe what they're saying, as opposed to just feel like they're riling up their base.
I think we may have to do that.
And
That may be a future episode of like, because I do think people, I mean, I think it goes both ways, but like, who's really like a true believer of each party? Like, this person really believe, even on the left, I think I'm like, nah, I don't think you're, you know, far enough. I think, you know, progress or whatever. You're not doing enough.
well, like in my opinion, right? We talk about, oh no, I forgot Sanders. There we go. I forgot his name for a second. We talk about Bernie Sanders. I think that guy is a true believer.
Yeah.
I think he really, honestly, truly believes what he talks about and what he's doing. I do not think, for the most part, that he's out there simply trying to foment his voters into his way of belief and thinking. I think that he really believes it. He wants people to believe it. He thinks it's the best interest for people. You know, I think Nancy Pelosi has figured out that she can manipulate a base and get votes.
Dude, that, I mean, even being on the left, all that stuff came out about the stock trades. I was like, of course. But
it's totally legal.
Yeah.
Because she's part of Congress.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the thing that helps Bernie, the reason why I believe Bernie is he's been saying the same thing for a lot of years. This isn't something he just all of a sudden came into. I mean, this is like the 60s and 70s. He's been talking about all this stuff, you know? And
I mean, he went to Cuba or Russia or whatever. There's tapes of him over there. And
yeah, that's what did him in.
I don't agree with basically anything he says, but I do believe he believes what he preaches.
And there's people on the right, I think, I'm trying to think of someone. Well, I mean, I'm trying to think of someone who's reasonable on the right. Well, I think that, like Kissinger, Adam, he's the one that, like, I saw an in-depth interview with him on Frontline about the January 6th thing, and he's like, listen, we all said this was bad, and I do believe in this country. And no matter how he voted, he really said, you know, this is a problem, and I need to step up, you know. Even, I'll say Mitch McConnell, I think he's pretty vile, but I think he believes in, this is what we're doing, we're going to stick to it. Well, I mean, there is that thing, too, about there. I don't know if you saw that long interview. He had to sit down at a conference and someone asked him what his moral red line was, and he didn't answer the question. I'll send you the clip after this where they said, you know, what, you've done this, you've done X, you've done Y. What is your red line? And he goes, what are you talking about? And they're like, what wouldn't you vote for? Like, if you said Trump, that's when it came up. They said, you said Trump was responsible for this insurrection. Why are you again saying, oh yeah, like we look forward to, you know, him being the nominee in 2024? And Mitch McConnell's response is, well, he's the party nominee. And the guy said, that's not the point. If you think he started an insurrection, don't you think you should not endorse him to be the party lead in 2024? And he said, I don't understand. If he's the party lead, I'm going to support him. And the guy was like, okay, but that's not the point.
But that's what we run into on both sides of the spectrum.
Yeah.
We have devolved politically, and the news media the same way. Like, I have a hard time trusting any news on either side because neither side of the news media has any objectivity. They are all 100% critical of their political enemies, the people that they disagree with, and none of them are willing to be critical of their own, or very, very little.
Right.
And so what you run into at this point is you now have a belief system, both left and right, that basically says the ends justify the means, no matter the cost. And, I mean, we've seen what's happening to our society over it. I'm also, conspiracy theory here, 100% believe, this is just me, there's no real solid evidence, this is purely speculation. Well, there's evidence that the world of social media that we live in, I believe completely that Russian and Chinese actors are intentionally manipulating people, and they're not doing it on one side or the other. They're doing it on both because they want us divided.
I mean, that was the whole hearings with Zuckerberg. They're like, why what are you doing? Like, you're just letting this stuff go, like letting it run, and you're taking checks from people that you know are nefarious actors, and you're just like, sure, we just cash the check and just let it go, you know. And I mean, you work in IT, like that stuff, you know.
It's different from what I do, but the point being is I think in the 2016 election, right, all that stuff came out about Cambridge Analytica and a lot of other stuff, and the ability for these companies to really manipulate and present information and really rile up a group of people is extremely powerful.
Yeah.
And we see it all the time. We see it in political cartoons, and we're running deeper and deeper and deeper into people separating more and more and more into their own pockets.
Yeah.
From the way Twitter is set up, the way Facebook's set up, the way Instagram's set up, the way all of them are set up, people congregate into their groups, and they just get more and more and more worked up. And cooperation, understanding, discussion is getting worse and worse and worse. And I personally think that this is Chinese, Russian, maybe North Korean. I don't even want to call them hacking groups, because it's not hacking.
No.
Like, they've got full access to these systems to do it. I think they're putting the information out. They're getting access into these groups, presenting themselves, getting into Facebook groups, getting into Telegram groups, and then spreading this misinformation or these speculations that are just believable enough that people latch onto them, and then
well, that's what it is. Like,
becomes true.
I mean, you and I, like, I don't go on Facebook as much as I used to, but like, just a scroll of your feed at Facebook, you're like, what is this? What is this? You know, like...
And right now, I'm seeing a lot from my conservative friends about how this is all just a witch hunt, and, like, why aren't we going after Hillary? Why aren't we going after...
Go after her. I don't care.
Ghislaine Maxwell. Like, how come this is what we're after? Trump didn't do anything wrong. And I think the part that's missed is, like, one, we are still investigating a lot of their stuff. No, I do believe no one wants Ghislaine, whatever her...
Well, she was found guilty, right? I mean, they are going after her.
She was, but I don't think they want her contact list out anywhere. I don't think they want the names coming out that they...
Yeah.
And I think that's everyone. And I don't think this is... I don't think anyone on the right wants that information any more than anyone on the left wants that information out. Because Trump was involved with Epstein the same level as Clinton was involved with Epstein.
Yeah, even Bill Gates. Bill Gates was...
Gates, right? And was it Melinda's commentary about... That's a thing, a part of her divorce was Gates's involvement.
Oh, yeah, because...
I don't think it was the cause, but I do think it was something that gave her a lot of pause and concern.
Yeah. Well, I mean...
And so...
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Well, this will probably be a little bit shorter episode because, again, this is this is a story. I think you and I are on the same page. They executed the warrant. I want to see where the evidence goes. If it is found that he has classified documents that he should not have, which it sounds like all of them that have not, then I think the full and other law should be, should be brought against him, I think is what it is. So,
well, and I'm a very firm believer in that no one is above the law. I'm not even a fan of the constitutional protection of a president from prosecution, right? Like, I think anyone should be open to it. Yes, there are places where maybe it needs to be protected, like in a time of war, but very, very limited. Yeah. I really honestly think it needs to be limited, and if he broke the law, he needs to be prosecuted.
Yeah.
If he changed the law for the punishment to be more strict, that's on him.
You know what? Better. I understand what he's thinking about, and I kind of agree with him. The idea that I didn't even know it was a misdemeanor. It's like, wait, you can just have classified documents and be like, pay a fine and slap on the wrist. So I do kind of agree with him where he's like, we need to make this, more stringent. Little did he know that was going to happen. So,
and the reality of it is, right, like where I was going, why I say I think this is sort of grabbing at straws. I do think that if they find it, he broke the law and he should be punished for it. However, the reason I say it's grabbing at straws is I would wager every American president has probably kept some form of documentation.
Yeah.
And probably has some form of information in their possession that would fall under this particular category. They're the freaking president, right? Like, this is stuff that they have complete access to. They know
if they did
everything that we don't know.
Yeah, I know. Well, no, I think too there's a lot of, like, I can't keep this document, but you know what I mean? Like the CA briefs and all that. Like I'm not keeping the document that tells the the nuke codes, but I know the last two numbers are 1 and 5, whatever it is. Like stuff like that.
Yeah, but like, you don't. I mean, admitting you would like to think that these guys are great about getting that stuff back, but I would wager basically every president that we've ever had has probably kept some form of document. Now, maybe not in bulk, maybe not in mass, and most of them would probably turn it back over.
Or go, because that's one thing they haven't been reporting if this happened with any other presidents before. Of like, oh yeah, it's going to take a month. You got to give us back. Oh crap, I have this one box in the back of my closet. I forgot. Here you go. Anyway,
right.
I mean, I think next month we'll do the episode we were going to do on water. I think it's really important. More news about it is coming up.
Interesting.
So, do you want to plug anything before we leave, Evan?
I mean, as always, just bring up my other YouTube channel, Your Agent Guide, where I just give tips, tricks, advice, basic information on real estate. Your Agent Guide on YouTube, youragentguide.com.
Yeah. And
then, of course, I'd like to plug the Gaming with Grief podcast done by a good friend of mine. His name is Joseph.
Oh, nice. Yeah. So, have a good month, guys, and we will talk to everybody next month.